Hi guys, and welcome to Manch Talk. I'm your host, Carla Gericke. A little hot and sweaty, to be honest. I'm trying some new things. You'll see the laptop is over here to my left, and we will be streaming live to both Facebook and X Live. So that's kind of exciting. It is always so wonderful to see when technology changes and allows us as humans to network better, to create those synapses, to create those relationships between ourselves as humans. And I was really reminded about that at the Bitcoin conference last week, where I spent the week in Vegas networking, talking to some of my heroes and all of that. So I will be filling you in on that in a second. So today, what will we be talking about? We will be talking about the Bitcoin conference. We will be talking about how to abolish the TSA. And you will get one of my sad stories because, of course, I was just on an airplane again. And then we will be talking about PorcFest that is coming up. The teaser for today is if you are a fan of Ross Ulbricht, who, of course, was pardoned by Trump at the start of this year. He was a person who was over-sentenced, who was subject to lawfare, who was subject to the government's overreach. He has been pardoned. He is free. I met him at the Bitcoin conference, and he will be coming to PorcFest. So stick around to find out which day he'll be at PorcFest. And if you haven't bought your tickets yet to the 22nd Porcupine Freedom Festival, please go to PorcFest, PorcFest.com, and get your tickets today. All right, so what was the Bitcoin conference all about? Guys, it was bananas. I mean, these conferences are always sort of like this, depending on what the price of Bitcoin is doing. But it was up. JD Vance was there. So many speakers, so many exciting things happening. I probably won't remember all of it, but I do know that the content is available on YouTube. I believe you can find it under the Bitcoin Magazine's channel. So here is the Bitcoin Magazine that came out with the conference this year. And of course, you can see there, of course, it is the handsome Ross Ulbricht, who I got to meet, and his beautiful wife, Caroline, and they will be up here in the Great White Mountains at our Free State Project Porcupine Freedom Festival. So why did I go? Well, you know, people said way back in the day when I platformed Lynn, his mother, that, you know, why are we doing this? You can't really fix problems. It's broken. You'll never get him out. There were a lot of naysayers. But I met Lynn. I was convinced of her conviction of her son's innocence in terms of what his goals were. It was a political case. Indeed, the prosecutor and I believe the judge actually said that they would not allow any of his libertarian philosophy to be presented in court because it would be too compelling for the jury. So I was out there to talk about the other crypto hostages that we have seen that have kind of been caught up in what this project under Biden. It was Operation Choke Point, and this is basically an executive order that was brought out by Biden under the Biden administration to go after crypto. And we know here in the Free States, in the great state of New Hampshire, there were several Free Staters and pro-crypto people who were caught up in this mix, including, of course, Jeremy Kaufman of Library. He went through a lawsuit, did not prevail, had to pay a lot of fines, destroyed his company. And then, of course, Ian Freeman of Free Talk Live, who is currently in prison and has been in prison for 8 years, which is a very long sentence, where the government, much as they do, kind of orchestrated this one story that really had nothing to do with the charges that they ended up proving. But as it is, they destroyed his reputation and made him sound really bad in the press. How do we know? Because this is a tactic that the state uses against principled people in order to sort of bolster their lawfare. For example, with Ross Ulbricht, They brought out claims of murder for hire. He was never charged with those charges. But if you, to this day, actually Google him, that'll be on the first page, right? So why? So that people like me and like you stay away from the story because you're like, that sounds messy. I don't know. The guy sounds kind of shady. I just don't want to be involved. And that is a known government tactic. So with Ian Freeman of Free Talk Live and Free Keene, they actually dropped a press release the day he was sentenced in which they used the terms fraudster and scammer. So the worst charge he actually got convicted of was conspiracy to commit money laundering. So for a conspiracy under the state, it's literally two people, and it is so overbroad that it really is hard not to catch people under that sort of umbrella term. So he was sentenced, Ian Freeman was sentenced as though he was involved in romance scams, but of course he was not. He only provided the ATM that these women who had never met the people that they gave millions of dollars to, that is not Ian's fault. I mean, everyone can understand that. And side note, I was watching a documentary about romance scams recently, or a series, and to try and understand sort of the mindset of someone who would do that, and by that I mean give your life savings or a good chunk of your savings or even $10 to some random dude on the internet. Now why? Because people are lonely, because these scammers are well trained in behavioral science, and there is a science to luring people in and changing their minds about things. And it really behooves us to be mindful of that. So if you are watching this show and you are currently chit-chatting to someone on the internet that you've actually never really met in person, may I tell you, buyer beware. All right, so we were at the Bitcoin conference, and part of my job was to help promote information about the crypto hostages. So of course, for me personally, it is Ian Freeman here in the Free State, and this says, "Let our people go." President Trump has announced that Biden's war on Bitcoin and crypto is over. It is time to release the prisoners of war. So both I and Angela McArdle were out there sort of talking about Ian Freeman and also actually about Roger Ver. So Roger, for the folks who don't know, he is known as Bitcoin Jesus. He is a very principled early Bitcoin adopter. In fact, he came to PorcFest way back in the day. And as I was at the Bitcoin conference, I realized, wow, we're kind of losing our history here in the Free State because we too were the early adopters. We as a community, many of us have lived off or continue to live off crypto investments. I saw a lot of Free Staters at the conference. I saw Keith Emmon, who is now a 4-term state representative out of New Boston. He actually gave a 5-minute speech on the main stage on the Tuesday, which was like the industry day. There were between 30,000 and 35,000 attendees. I personally have been to many conferences over my lifetime, and this was the biggest room I've been in. Maybe like football stadiums I get are bigger, but really for a room with thousands of people, and you could palatably feel that energy, which was really exciting. J.D. Vance came out. He was like, look, the war against crypto is over. So I think if you are someone who has been following this industry, it feels like it's on the cusp of maturing. I think the next 3 years are going to be really good for crypto and specifically for Bitcoin. And of course, the reason Keith Emmon was on stage there was to trumpet the law we just passed here in New Hampshire, signed by Kelly Ayotte, our governor, creating a Bitcoin strategic fund or a Bitcoin reserve fund that actually also can take gold, silver, and platinum. So it truly is a sound money legislation where 5% of public funds can be held in Bitcoin, gold, silver, or platinum. And why is that important? Because it is one small step to making sure we have fiscally responsible statehood here in New Hampshire, so that, you know, whether Trump and his big beautiful bill creates, you know, another $8 to $10 trillion in debt, which translates from $8 for eggs to probably going to be $15, $16 for eggs. Another side note for a second. Here on this book, right, The Psychology of Money. I bought this at the airport on the way back because my headphones had run out of battery and I didn't have the right charger, whatever. This book is very interesting because it actually does talk about how deeply we as humans are influenced by our own experience with money. And what do I mean by that? Actually, specifically, people who grew up in the Great Depression have a certain relationship with money. People who grew up in Brazil during the 90s when it was insanely inflationary. How do I know? Because my dad was stationed in Rio de Janeiro in 1994-ish, 3, 2, 1, early 90s. And my sister and I would go home for holidays. We'd get Brazilian reals, the money there, we'd keep them, and then when we would go back for the next vacation, when we had our school breaks and our university breaks, that money would literally not be worth the paper it was printed on. We used to go up to the roof and make paper airplanes and throw them off the building because the currency was literally not worth it. That is hyperinflation. That is what happens when you have too much debt and you're not the world's base currency. But it's not impossible that it could happen here in the United States. So those of us who are futuristic, those of us who think about these kinds of things, have been here in New Hampshire now for decades, working on putting the right tools and the right things in place to make sure over time that we position the granite state, the free state, to remain the freest state, but also to remain solvent and actually functioning should the great ship there in DC go down. So Roger, of course, as Bitcoin Jesus, he's facing 108 or 9 years because these sentences are also absurd. They are anchors that the state throws out there because no one has any accountability. They just, make up these numbers, scare you to death. If they're really good at it, they force you to either commit suicide or take a plea. So he is currently on the island of Mallorca in Spain, awaiting extradition to the United States. Why should you care about Roger's case? Because they sent the IRS with guns to his lawyer in America's office and raided their office and took their files. Now attorney-client privilege is one of the oldest things under the legal system. And for the IRS to so blatantly just behave that way should be something that should be troubling to every American. So I was out there sort of talking to people about this, about Ian. There's some other people, Tornado Cash, some other guys I need to do a little bit more research on. But the idea is that since the administration does have an appetite to start to more sanely deal with the crypto space, that there is an opportunity here to work with Trump in the same way we did to free Ross, to also get these other prisoners of war out of jail. Lynn Ulbricht, who is Ross's mom, her new initiative, and she will also be at PorcFest, which is coming up in 10 days. 10 days, guys. So I realized PorcFest is always the third week in June. And that means this year it's very early, right? It's June 16th through the 22nd. And sometimes that can be kind of hard because I think some of the schools in other states may still be open. If there was a snow week, we're pushed out. The state house and the legislators might be meeting. So it's not really ideal. So of course, if you are here in either New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, or down in Massachusetts, make sure you come up as well. Maybe even just come for the weekend. PorcFest.com. All right, so Lynn's new initiative is called Mothers Against Cruel Sentencing. And I'm really excited about this initiative. I did ask her, I was like, hey, can I help? And she's like, of course. I'm like, but I'm not a mother. She's like, mothers and others, which I thought was cute. So these exorbitant sentences that we see, which again is a form of extortion or blackmail, right? It's an anchor that you can't control that they put over there, and then they say, well, you want to play? You know, let's go. So she is taking the initiative, and I hope people will get involved to take the success we saw with Ross and to translate that to get the many other people who are prisoners in our injustice system out of prison, especially where there are these cruel and unusual punishments. Because of course, with Ross, and he said this in his speech, which was great. It's also online, but maybe don't go look at it because maybe it'll be the similar one at PorcFest. But you know, Ross faced 2 life sentences without the chance of parole. He was 26 when he got charged, I guess. He was incarcerated for 12 years. And the thing that would hang over your head, which makes it cruel and unusual punishment, as defined, by the way, by the UN, is this facing of a life sentence where there is literally, you're saying this person is unredeemable, and that is a terrible way to navigate through life. All right, so that was kind of the Bitcoin conference. Ross's top 3 things that he mentioned that I think is worth mentioning anyway is the mantra of freedom, decentralization, and unity. I like the idea of those things together, especially maybe even decentralization and unity. That sounds like they're kind of maybe not in balance with each other, but when you think about it, if you are decentralized, right? That's many of us as individuals doing things, but we can have unity about the things we're doing and thereby rise, and that rising tide lifts all boats. All right, the tide I want to make rise is let's abolish the TSA. Why? Because I'm tired of getting gate raped. It happened again. So let's break it down. On the way to Vegas Monday morning, I did my now signature First Amendment move in the scanner. What is that, Carla? Let's just say the bird is deployed with a double situation, mostly because one, I think it is not on accident, and in fact, I know for a fact it's not, that the position you have to take in these scanners is putting your hands up with your palms out. That is a position of surrender. There are many ways they could have made you stand in that scanner, but the government decided that's the way to do it. Now, because I am very much in touch with myself, my rights, everything that's happening at the airport, by the way, is a Fourth Amendment violation of your constitutional rights. Now, yes, did they get the courts to go along with it? Yes. But here's the argument that they used. Yeah, the Constitution doesn't apply with 100 miles of any border. It's kind of the rule they made up, which when you parse it out, and you're logical and rational and actually understand how the law is supposed to work and how the Constitution of America is supposed to protect our rights and restrain the government, you realize that is some nonsense they're telling you. But what can you do? So what we can do is we can abolish the TSA. So I flipped my birds on the way there. The guard, I mean, here in Manchester, they probably know me by now. he just looked at me and I smiled at him and he just waved me through. So I was like, yay, Manch. But then on the way back, oh my goodness, guys. So I had a 6 a.m. flight, which means I was at the airport around 4:30 in the morning. That is not my favorite time of day. It involved having to leave the hotel room. The checkout thing wasn't working. Now I'm rushed. I was like, oh, I'm just going to get a taxi instead of an Uber. It was actually cheaper. I didn't have time for coffee. Fine, I'm going to go. I checked my bag. I am going through the security. And in my head, I'm kind of like, am I going to do it or am I not going to do it? And I will say this, the reason I have started to hesitate is because of the invasive nature of one of the pat downs I got. The woman actually did sexually molest me. And I didn't realize at the time, although I did go to the bathroom and kind of have a meltdown, like a physical reaction. And then I kind of like filed it away, right? I'm a tough girl. And I didn't realize it had troubled me as much as it had, or emotionally influenced me as much as it had, till we flew down for my mom's memorial, and I got another pat down, and it was not good. I was having a very difficult time with this violation of my bodily autonomy, right? Like, I'm not consenting to this. And so I'm in the scanner, and I was like, well, you got to do it. You've been doing it since the TSA started. Like, go, freedom fighter. And so I flipped the bird, but it is very half-hearted. It was by far the most tepid attempt I've ever given. And I get out the scanner, and the friggin' thing alerts. And I'm just like, I am not here for this. So the lady comes over and she's like, oh, it alerted on your groin area. And I was like, no, how can this be? This is like the 7th time in a row this has happened. I don't consent, whatever. And she just looks at me and she's immediately like, supervisor, right? So the supervisor comes and she takes one look at me and I'm kind of like, I'm not in the mood, I'm telling you. And I was like, look, she's like, would you like to go for a private screening? And I was like, why? What's going to happen in the private screening? Excuse me, that I have allergies. What's going to happen in the private screening that can't happen out here? I want everyone to see you guys violating my rights. And she goes, you're yelling at me. And I was not yelling, for the record. I was speaking forcibly. There's a difference. And she's like, well, if you're not going to let me, because I was like, look, I don't consent to you doing this. And she's like, do you want to fly or do you want to leave? Do you want to fly or do you want to leave? She was yelling at me, by the way. And I was like, well, it's not really a choice. This is a false choice that you're giving me, because I either have to consent to your molestation of my body or I'm not going to fly. And she's like, well, I'm glad you understand. And then I might have said something to her, and then she called the cops. Great. So now it's me and the cops, 4:21 a.m. Here is my little timestamp complaint card. So the cops show up, and I'm not happy, but now I'm in lawyer mode, and I'm like, okay, like, just do it right. So I do it right. I make them switch their body cams on. I stand there. By this stage, other people are looking. Everyone is making very sympathetic eye contact, by the way, but no one will come to to help you or to be like, yeah, actually, thank you, or whatever, right? So in the meanwhile, now my bag has been pulled out and is now getting searched for the second time. I mean, that clown is like digging through the side bags of my backpack, and he like pulls out stuff and he goes, oh, snackies. I mean, it's literally like dried dates and some macadamia nuts. And I was just like, yes, snackies. He's like, what's your attitude? I'm like, I know they're snacks. I know I'm not a terrorist. I know that everything you guys are doing is a violation of my rights. And you know it too. So what are we going to do? Turns out there is a bill that has been introduced called the Abolish the TSA Act of 2025. It was introduced on March 27th, 2025 by Senators Mike Lee, who's a Republican out of Utah, and Tommy Tuberville, a Republican out of Alabama. It proposes a 3-year phase out by 2028, replacing the TSA's 58,000 employees and $11.8 billion, so we'll just call it a straight up $12 billion budget. So they're going to phase it out, they're going to bring in private security, and there will be a new office called the Office of Aviation Security Oversight. So dissolving the TSA over 3 years would solve a lot of these problems, right? Because the TSA has like 58,000 employees. They don't stop 90 to 95% of their own tests. So they are an abject failure on the face of it. It is security theater. We can do better. Privatize all the security at the airports. And if you're a libertarian, let's get behind this bill. Let's make this a push issue with Trump. You heard it here first because other people will go do it. But let's make this something that we push and that we get rid of the TSA, which is part of the Department of Homeland Security, which all started under the Patriot Act, which started as a fear of terrorism, which after 25 years, you can't tell. It's a story they're telling you. I can't help you. All right. In the last minutes that we have here today on the show, when will Mr. Ross be up at PorcFest? So for folks who don't know, PorcFest takes place at Rogers Campground in Lancaster. If it's your first time, remember to pack things like a hoodie and real socks and a poncho and bug spray and a hat and some sunscreen and water, okay? So that you know you're coming to nature, and it does get cold at night here. Ross and his beautiful wife, Caroline, and his mother, Lynn. Lynn will be there all week together with Martha Bueno from Miami, and some of the crew that we've worked with over the years to do this amazing miracle of getting a man out of a life sentence in prison. And Ross will be joining us on Saturday, the biggest day. I'm really happy about that because it also means that the Free Staters and the Liberty lovers here in New Hampshire who maybe are working during the week and couldn't take the time off, get your ticket, come on Saturday. Let's show them a really great time. Let's show them the heart of our community that has done these amazing things. And let's let them know that actually it was the early steps taken by Free Staters in New Hampshire, including, by the way, the Trump play started here with me and Lynn being like, hey, let's leverage First in the Nation. Let's make this a topic that we will ask every single candidate who comes here. And I did. I asked Vivek. I asked Bobby Kennedy, Trump, all of it. And we made it work. So if you want to know what's going to be happening in the next 10 years in New Hampshire, PorcFest is the place to be because sadly I'm always 10 years early or sometimes even more. But come to PorcFest, come see what the community's up to, come see what the exciting new ideas are, and just come commune with the people who are building the best future for all of us. Thanks, guys, for joining me. I will be back here again next week. And for folks online, thanks for joining me here. I think this one might actually work. All right, thanks for your time, guys.